evening. We are live. It is Saturday night, and I'm not used to this. It's been 2 months since I'd last did a stream, and I'm totally out of the loop. It's taken me a while to get everything set up. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not great at the best of times, but especially when I've not. I never really get used to streaming, even though as many times as I've done it, I still struggle with like just.
I know what you mean. I think the countdown stuff is always like anytime you've got to do something and there's a time to do it, there's that little moment of like, oh shit.
I've always wanted to be able to edit and like put together like little montages before I go live, but I just haven't got the technical know-how to do, and I just haven't really got the determination to sort of learn how to do all that stuff. I just, I'd like to, but in the end,
yeah. I would say my editing is like pretty sort of rudimentary, but like the app does the work rather than me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, but like if I do any editing, it's mainly like takes me a long time. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But it's good to have you back. It's good to have you live and in living color.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like dwell on the past too. I mean, I don't really want to. I mean, because one of the reasons I've not really streamed much in the last few months is like people who watch the channel know that like Dave was a big part of the channel, and he was become like pretty much a permanent fixture on the streams. So obviously when we lost Dave, that hit me for 6, and like it did everybody else, and I kind of really struggled to get any sort of like motivation to do anything really. So
I think making sense of it is such a personal thing as well, isn't it? Everybody made sense of it in a very different way. So no, I totally understand that. That makes perfect sense, mate.
Yeah. Oh, cheers, Dan. Yeah, it's good to be back, man. Thank you. Always plugging the channel as well on Twitter and on Discord as well. Thanks for that. Yeah. So, basically, I thought I'd come back with something a little bit different rather than movie related, and I'm just thinking because I've kind of been getting a bit hyped for WWE. Like, I've not really been watching WWE on a regular basis since probably like the early 2010s, kind of around the time that the whole sort of like Nexus angle, like that was the thing that really sort of got me back into it for a while. I think that really, and then I kind of stayed around for a year or two after that, but then I kind of it just fell away again. But with WWE Raw going to Netflix, it's going to be such a it's going to be there just front and center for me to watch at any time. And at the minute, I've kind because I'm not like I haven't got the WWE network, and I'm not going to go searching for the streams online to watch everything they've got, because there's a lot of content now in WWE. There's almost
massive. Yeah, there's a massive amount, and the shows are so long as well.
Yeah.
I have the network, but obviously it'll disappear when they move to Netflix. So the stuff that I watch in like sort of the older stuff that I watch and maybe listen to, like podcasts and where they watch along. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that anymore, which is a bit disappointing. But in terms of like the live stuff, I dip in and out with WWE. I dip in and out with AEW. And to be honest, the stuff we're talking about today is probably the era where I watched it the most. So like certainly the late 90s, probably early 90s up to the late 90s, maybe dipped out again about 2001-ish. And again, like the Daniel Bryan stuff, I really enjoyed. CM Punk I was really into later. But again, it's access to it. And then sometimes, like a lot of things, it can be overwhelming when there's so much content. And at the moment there's some great stuff going on. I really got involved in the sort of the Cody Rhodes coming back to WWE, really enjoyed that story. The Bloodline, which is kind of petering out now, but it's in a good period to be a wrestling fan. The weird thing I think is the late 90s is the only time where for a brief moment it became cool, like very, very briefly. And I don't know what young people think about it now, whether I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'll be curious to see like the breakdown of like the sort of demographics of who watched the shows. Like, is the age is it still is a lot of like older like sort of people our age watching it, or has it managed to attract a younger audience like teenagers? I'm assuming they must, because like I think fathers and it's like a father and son thing. I think if the father's into the wrestling, then he'll take his sons to the shows, or he'll get them watch it on TV.
Obviously I'm ancient, so it was like my dad took me to like Stockport Town Hall to watch Big Daddy. So like that kind of wrestling, but then I took like my little brother-in-laws who quite a lot younger than me, took them to like WWE Raw in Manchester, and when they did the British Championship in Blackpool, I took them to that. And that was good. Again, it's like passing it on to other people, other members of your family, or just whoever will go when you're going. So yeah, I think you're right. I think as well, like in the period maybe where we both dropped out, I think it went really family friendly. That sort of major Cena era, like very kid friendly. Now going to Netflix, they're kind of doing a few more things that are a little bit more adult centric as they get towards Netflix, and they don't have to do the things that network TV tell them they have to do. So that'll be really interesting. I think it's going to be huge going on to Netflix. I think it's going to make it almost like go to the point of not like as big as, but like on a kind of a level, not a level, but maybe like eyes on it, a bit like a Disney property. It'll kind of become like Marvel or something being on Disney, but maybe not as big as that. But
hopefully it doesn't like take the route that Marvel's gone on Disney and ends up going downhill. But
but, again, that's saturation, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me just turn my light off.
No bother. I was just trying to work out the same with mine, because things keep reflecting in my glasses. So if I do that, things reflect in my glasses. If I do that, they don't. So I'm just like this all the time, constantly.
So before we get into the list, it's a random list off the internet I found. But I mean, obviously we can discuss where we'd place our number ones, twos, and threes, and what I think it's the top 25. We can race through some of the earlier numbers, but once we get to the top 10, maybe spend a little bit longer. But just getting back to like how I got into WWF as it was known then. Obviously, back in I wasn't. It was just impossible. We couldn't watch WWF in the UK in the 80s, obviously, because there was no cable TV. We had 4 television channels, and certainly we weren't aware of the WWF. I think a lot of people knew who Hulk Hogan was. Hulk, I can't get my words out. Hulk Hogan was just through the Rocky movie, and he was a larger than life character. I think was he in the A-Team? An episode of the A-Team?
I think he was definitely in an episode of it. Yeah, I mean, blimey, so many pop culture. Like Boy George was in the A-Team, wasn't he?
Yeah. But it was really when Sky TV came along in 1990, around about 1990 in the UK, which was like the first exposure to like American TV stations and a lot of American TV. Obviously, we got American TV programs in the 80s, but with Sky TV coming along, we just got inundated with new TV channels, and a lot of stuff that was coming over. Like The Simpsons was massive, because The Simpsons
it's huge.
It was huge. Like obviously, it's huge in the States. It was huge all over the world. But like because Sky TV got The Simpsons, and they were the only channel who was showing it, that brought a lot of people over to Sky, who were obviously Sky TV was a subscription channel. You had to pay for it. Whereas in the UK, the main 4 channels were obviously free to view, although the BBC is kind of like a tax in a way. But so when obviously Sky came over to the UK, one of the things that they brought along with it was WWF, and that's when a lot of kids in my school. I think I was born in '76, so I was about 13, going on 14 when a lot of kids in school started getting into WWF, and I wasn't. I didn't get onto it until about 92. A lot of kids were talking about it, and they were buying the magazine, the WWF magazine, and I was really interested. But at the time, I didn't have a satellite dish. Mum and dad wouldn't fork out for one. So I used to grab bits and pieces going round to my friend's house because he had Sky TV, and I'd see it every now and again. But
I was exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah, so it was just like you'd see all these names like Rick Martel, The Undertaker. But I'm just thinking like off the top of my head, what I think it was like the 1992 Royal Rumble. I distinctly remember like that Royal Rumble and like who took part in that. And even though I never actually saw it at the time, I just remember flicking through like a friend's magazine. But I think we didn't actually get satellite until very early 1994. So WrestleMania 10 was my first ever pay-per-view that I saw actually. No, I didn't see it live, but I think I saw
You
I
recorded it.
Yeah, I recorded it and watched it the next day. But I did grab like VHS tapes before we got subscription TV, and like I had the Ultimate Warrior VHS tape. I think it was Was it called Titan Video? Used to put out
Coliseum home video, wasn't it? Yeah,
Coliseum home video.
I remember that video. The white tape with the red outline, and he's on the front like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were putting out VHS tapes back in the early 90s. So that was another way to get my fix. But yeah, in terms of like regular viewing, it was 94, the beginning of 94, and then that went right through to like probably like I want to say about 2000, like probably similar to you, like 2001, and then it just faded for me, and it was another decade before I got back into it. But
yeah,
I mean,
it almost identical story for me, mate. To be honest, like again, we never had. I don't think we ever had Sky, or certainly if we didn't, then what would happen is I had a friend like a rich kid at school who would record it for me on VHS. So every week he'd bring like Prime Time, Superstars, maybe All American Wrestling, and then the first one he recorded for me was Royal Rumble '92, the same. It was. And obviously then mainstream over here picked it up around '92 more because SummerSlam was at Wembley. So with that came the songs. So they released Slam Jam and WrestleMania song, which is weirdly
remember that.
Simon Cowell. I think I've still got the tapes of him somewhere, which was a Simon Cowell idea, which was like, these guys are massively popular. Let's have them make a song and make a load of money off it. So then from that, I was buying the Topps cards for SummerSlam '92. Which I think I sold on eBay for a nice profit recently, because it collected the full set of those. Collected the Hasbro figures. Again, had loads of those. Sold them. Sold a lot of them. Kept the ones I've kept. I've kept all of Hart Foundation. So I've got Owen, Brett, Bulldog, a few others. But I've not got all my figures that I used to have. And yeah, the same as you, I kind of dipped in and out. I've always I think even when I wasn't watching, I used to read Power Slam magazine, so that kept me in the loop because that was such a well written, brilliant British magazine.
Right, I didn't realize Power Slam was British.
Yeah, so that was weird. That was from the guy who did it, Finn Martin, was from, I think he's from Doncaster. So he would be like a big tape trader as well. And I used to do quite a bit of tape trading. So sometimes if I couldn't afford to get like a proper release of something, or if it just wasn't available, I would just buy like a tape traders version of it, or that they recorded off TV in America and then somebody got hold of it over here. So I was just like avidly, I get WWF magazine occasionally, but that was more expensive than Power Slam.
Well, didn't Power Slam acknowledge that wrestling was fake as well?
I think, yeah, it was really insider. It was like it didn't like say the WWF magazine where it was like it would kind of do this, go through the storylines and everything. Whereas like Power Slam, he was just a smart fan. I don't know how he got so deep into it and got so many like big names to interview and all that. It was brilliant, really, from like a little like one magazine publishing company. Pretty amazing.
Well, actually, I'll rephrase that. Not fake, scripted. Because I mean, like I say, it's not.
Well, that's it.
It's not. I mean, they take bumps. They get hurt a lot, and obviously, it's not boxing or UFC, but they're still putting their lives on the line. My God.
Well, that's it. It's a bit like people, saying like a movie, you do like, they love to tell you wrestling's fake. You're like, yeah, well, like I'm aware that like Iron Man is a character as well, but that doesn't stop me enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like there's good actors and bad actors, just like there's great wrestlers and terrible wrestlers,
Yeah.
and the storylines can be really compelling if they've done really well, but also they can be absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't bother me if people say it's fake. There has to be a suspension of disbelief to accept and enjoy it, but also, yeah, like you say, it's a massively physical sport. A lot of legitimate athletes do it. It's maybe doesn't take the toll on its body it used to do when they were doing it literally 4, 5, 6 nights a week, but still physically what they're doing, and they're pushing the boundaries more now. So you can't just slap a headlock on for 15 minutes. There's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff going on. So I think they deserve a lot of respect for what they're doing, and some of those performers are insanely talented people,
Yeah.
both both character wise and physicality wise. I love UFC, and I've followed UFC since UFC one. But ultimately, like Dana White's only going to sort of like Conor McGregor is not the greatest fighter who ever lived.
Mm.
He's lost a lot of matches, but he always gets to the top of the bill because of his personality and character. He's a
Yeah.
character. If he had a personality like, I don't know, let's think of somebody quite bland from the UFC. I don't know, like I can't think of one person, but like, yeah, if he was just say he had a personality like Dan. No,
Well,
Dan
the
Severn's
guy,
a
I
bad
mean, the
example.
guy, the guy, the guy who retired unbeaten, who beat Connor, the
Oh, Nurmagomedov.
yeah, the little Russian guy, is it? Is he
Yeah,
like so
yeah.
like from the East, old Soviet Union? I mean, the guy wasn't really. He's hardly going to sell tickets, is he? Not on his personality, more just on his
No,
actual
on his
ability. You know what I
exactly
mean?
like that. Those kind of sort of sort of Russian Dagestan, all that
Yeah.
kind of that they're very regimented and
Mm.
serious and religious and just do the only time he was really exciting was when he got so wound up by Conor McGregor that he started doing things completely out of character.
Yeah.
That tells, even in UFC it works best when the storylines and people are and obviously you get people like, I'm not a big fan of Colby Covington for that reason, where he tries to invent drama and can't really back it up. He tries to invent, like, to be a character. He's a fairly decent fighter, but it's like he'll sit there with his, he'll start picking apart people, and you think you're not. This isn't genuine
Yeah.
beef or whatever. It
Yeah.
doesn't make me believe it.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll sit there and I'll believe that Cody Rhodes has to finish the story
Yeah.
because I know the background, and I know that genuinely to him, being the world champion when his dad didn't get to be really does matter to him, even though it's scripted, even though it's
Yeah.
decided and predetermined. We have to care. We have to really. He has to be really good at his job for us to care about that. And there was millions of people who really cared about him winning this
Yeah.
WrestleMania. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was
And
insane.
also, you can't like overstate the ability that a good promo, and not just I'm not just the promos in the ring on the mic. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
promos in the build up to the actual main events. I mean, like one of the greatest promos I ever saw was it was HBK and Undertaker, and it was running up that hill by Placebo as the
Oh
background
yeah.
music. That was
Yeah.
that was so well that like whole like 5 minute package to sort of
Yeah.
uh, push the main events. That was just like a work of genius, and I still come back
Oh,
and watch that. That was just that really hyped up that fight.
that's a
Um,
good point. Yeah, I think the return of Stone Cold after injury, my sacrifice video, my way video, the Rock and Stone Cold, the like how they timed the punches in the video to the
yeah,
beats and so, not even necessarily songs that are like my favorite songs or anything, but the way they put them.
yeah,
They did a great one for Daniel Bryan. I'm trying to think what it was called, but they did it was like Imagine Dragons song that they did. And again, not a band that I'm a fan of, but the song worked so well with the story it was telling. And music does play a massive massive
Yeah.
role in it, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah.
But particularly the way they used to edit them around the time of sort of Attitude Era was a real key moment of
Yeah.
the getting it just right. The music of the time, the there was kind of like South Park, wrestling, new metal.
Yeah.
They all kind of came around at the same time, and they all kind of fed
Yeah.
into each other. It's like I say, it's maybe the only time when it was like you could see people on the street walking around wearing wrestling t-shirts, and they were like I got a Stone Cold like a Austin 316 t-shirt, and I was like, do you know what? I might actually wear this outside of the house.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I did, but
But you'd be like, it wouldn't be like looks of what the hell's that mean? You know, because
yeah, it was so cool. I remember seeing it written on a wall. I was walking around Stockport, and somebody had written Austin 316 on a wall, and I thought, fucking hell, like there's at least one more person in my
yeah,
area who's like, because he was he's a good example of like you have to get all of those elements together, because he was a great technical wrestler in WCW, because they did used to be WCW Worldwide really late at night on ITV, and he was stunning Steve Austin, blonde hair, great technical wrestler, but it took a real shift of character over a period of time, and then an amazing promo, and then even like a bringing Mike Tyson in, and then feeding Vince McMahon. There's so much that built to him being the biggest moneymaker of all time, which is insane. It is insane that he went from being binned off by WCW to being bigger and more profitable than Hulk Hogan. Like, that's mad. And that was right in the time when, for people of mine and your age, like, that was the peak moment. We didn't know at the time it was going to be possibly the most mainstream it'll ever be. Now I feel like it's a bit more of a product.
yeah.
Then I think it was like, I don't know, like
I,
catching
I
the
hate
zeitgeist.
I hate the way that Vince. I mean, the whole WWE universe. I always hated that, like,
Yeah.
catchphrase. They throw it into every little thing, and it's
Well,
like,
yeah, well, they've started calling them fans again, haven't they? They've
yeah, it's
started
just,
saying fans, which
yeah,
literally since Triple H took over.
it was so like corporate. I want to say so. Like, it was so. I'm trying to think of the right word to use. There's the word escapes me. There's a word I was thinking of, but it's it just didn't really. It just felt so. Oh, didn't like it at all. It's just, like as if to separate itself from anything else, like the WWE universe. I'm just like, oh come on, that's just, it's so lame, and like, yeah, it's just, and
Yeah. Well, we've even got like, I mean, it seems to be a strategy that a lot of things use. Like even now, you look at the the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey universe thing, like the Pooniverse. It's mad. Like people like to. I
yeah,
think it's becoming to the point now where it is a bit of a joke
yeah,
having that, and I can see they're moving back to calling it wrestling again. They're moving back to recognizing other companies, other places where you wrestle, saying the word fans again. These are all things that kind of were a bit of a unique selling point when AEW started, but actually now Triple H is in charge. He's doing them as well, and in a way, it kind of matters more because they're the brand leader, aren't they? They're like the Coke, like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
AEW is like Pepsi, I guess, or I'm not even sure about that, because I feel like I used to when the AEW first started, I was like, this is great. This is everything I'm not getting from WWE. Now I think he's too much in a sort of tunnel vision. Tony Khan is doing too much of it himself. I don't think he's kind of delegating when he can, and he's like a kid with too many toys.
yeah,
And yeah, I still enjoy it. I'll still dip into it, but it was first year of AEW, and was like appointment TV. But then
yeah,
but like WWE, I think hit it out of the park with the Cody storyline, with the Bloodline, and then you were
yeah.
like, we're back.
I mean, AEW. I think AEW is more for like the pure wrestling fan, whereas though they do deal obviously with the drama and all the storylines. Like for me, WWF and WWE, whatever you want to call it, I was always more drawn to the razzmatazz, the actual promos and like almost more than the matches themselves sometimes. Not when it came to the biggest matches, the main events and matches, but sometimes when you get some of the matches which were pretty pointless, it was just a squash match back in the day, and I wasn't really interested in any of that. AEW does kind of, from what my experience is, they do seem to draw the matches out to a longer period of time. And it is.
It's all about the match. Yeah, it's all now. It is anymore.
Yeah, a lot of the matches, some of the matches, certainly with some of the smaller wrestlers, were like technically unbelievable. I mean, just performing at like an insane level. But it's almost to me like watching like ballet. Or
I think the issue with it is you're right.
It was too clear. It doesn't hit the same. I'm like old. I mean, I'm kind of like, I like to see a guy who's like 6'7" and weighs 300 pounds choke slam someone into the floor, rather than these two guys who are 5'8" dancing around each other. It's just, I appreciate the technicality of that is amazing.
Yeah,
but
there's somewhere in between, isn't there?
There's somewhere in the middle which I love.
Yeah, I think that's
nobody
the issue.
wants to see the Giant Gonzalez versus the Giant Gonzalez,
but
like
it's
there's something, but there's something about like a big guy coming down.
You have
to the
care.
ring.
You have to care, and there has to be a story there. So, like, if you're just watching a lot of moves, like
exactly.
I think from the moment they changed to, or they started saying this, like, we're the best wrestle, and really just focusing on getting those 5-star matches, I think Tony Khan creatively forgot that the things that were the most successful for them did build up over time as well. I thought they did a really good storyline with Hangman Adam Page, where he was kind of striking out on his own and working towards a world title. And that storyline was really well told over time. The CM Punk and MJF was really well told. That they're currently doing one really good storyline at the moment, which is, it's all based upon what's the film called with the two people? I think it might be All About Eve, or kind of one aging film star, and she is keeping the other one out of the spotlight but pretending to help her, with Tony Storm and Mariah May, which will play out tomorrow at Wembley. But the way they've told that story is really good. But what's interesting about it is I heard that the two women themselves came up with that, and he's kind of let them go with it. So I think it's hit and miss storylines with AEW, because he personally is the sort of wrestling fan that just wants to see 5-star matches.
Yeah.
And the thing is, for me, I need to care about those 5-star matches. So I love Bryan Danielson. I love, but we cared about him the most when he did that massive storyline build to WrestleMania. So, like you said, you've got to have both, because to invest in a character, you have to care about them, and in order to do that, you have to know something about them. Problem with AEW is sometimes people just turn up and wrestle, and you don't know who they are, or you have to be a hardcore wrestling fan to know who they are. And why would Joe Bloggs just switch on television and go, like, you might go for 5 minutes, oh, that's amazing, that's really, really good, but then you might not see that person on TV again for 3 or 4 weeks. So it doesn't make any sense. At least with like Triple H, one thing you will see is, and it's quite formulaic, but you will see that he tells stories over time. He definitely has his sort of favorites, but everybody you can't literally make every single person the top star. You have to make decisions, don't you? It's like a football manager, and you've got to have a squad. But not all of them are going to play, are they?
No. We'll get into the list now. I'll just quickly go through some of the comments because I've been ignoring the chat. Dan says the Bloodline story will heat up again at War Games.
Oh, that would be interesting.
They're doing so many international shows now. Bash and Berlin is next week. What's up, Cliff? He wasn't in WWF much in this decade, but Regal was hell on wheels in the 90s. It made me laugh with it when they introduced William Regal into WWF back in the day, and he came as like this like sort of aristocrat, and in reality, he was just a working class guy from Blackpool.
Yeah, it's mad. I actually saw him as quite a young man when remember when Big Daddy used to have a young person alongside him to do the actual wrestling.
Yeah.
I saw Regal as I don't know how old he was, but he didn't look young. He didn't look old, should I say? It's amazing. He's got such an interesting like proper end of the pier style sense of humor as well. So there's things that we would get as British people that maybe they wouldn't get in America that he was saying and doing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, technically it's fantastic, but so different because it's such a different style. Like the British, somebody who came into wrestling now doing a purely British style, like the Wigan style of wrestling, the Americans wouldn't know what it was. They'd be like, what is this?
Yeah. Dan says Regal probably would have had a title run if it were for the drug issues derailing him back then. And if not, then surely when he won King of the Ring, but he fucked himself again. After his King of the Ring win, I'm convinced they were getting ready to put the belt on him and SmackDown.
Maybe.
Yeah, Mania 10 was a good one. Yeah, would have been awesome. I don't know why a guy like him bothered with roids. Vince hated Regal's style, but obviously he valued him as a character.
Yeah, he was good as GM as well. So.
Vince was a retail. Yeah, he certainly was.
I would say he's even more than that. I would say that he got some, from the sounds of it, some very, very serious issues.
What's up, Jess? Nice to see you, man. The Regal Finley stuff is gold. I was happy they got to revisit that feud in WWE.
He's a tough guy, Finley. Blimey,
yeah. Connor's been rumored for a WWE match and storyline for years now. Yeah, we'd have to pay him a lot of money.
You never know.
Colby is still in the UFC because of his personality. He'd have been fired a long time ago if he didn't start talking mad shit.
That's it. That proves the point, really, that you need that, and obviously you need it in most things because there has to be something to invest in. If you were just a destroyer who squished everybody with no personality, I don't think people would watch it.
Cody has a similar story. Vince just saw him as a mid-card with a list before he reinvented himself in TNA, AEW.
Well, he backed himself really by kind of going out and doing it. She's people who know the story appreciate it, and what's really strange is lots of other people have bought into it as well. Fair play to him. And there's not many like straight up good guy wrestlers. He might be the only one really that's not got like an edge to him because he's kind of done all that with the Bullet Club and stuff. And now it's just literally like his gimmick is he's a good guy, which is so weird because we had that in the 90s, didn't we? Like Hulk Hogan era with good guys and bad guys. But when we were really into it in the mid 90s, it was all anti-heroes. It was NWO, Stone Cold. And it's kind of stayed like that really until Cody. I suppose Cena's the exception, isn't he? He's the kid-friendly one.
Yeah, to the point where it just got ridiculous in the end. But you know, they had so many chances.
Appreciate him now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It kind of it gets to the point where somebody's hated for that long, and they eventually come around to being loved again. You know, it's like I think it's like that with Cena. Tony Storm might be my favorite thing at AEW.
Yeah, she's doing great. That's going to be really interesting to see how they pull that off at Wembley tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't watch AEW, but the Dead Dad stuff with Christian was great.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, Christian factors into 25%.
I mean, he's just amazing. He's great. He'll have had all the creative control on that, surely. Like that'll just be stuff coming off Christian's top of his head.
Oh, Sean's in the chat. What's up, Sean? The greatest wrestler of all time, in my opinion, is The Undertaker. I think he'll be high up on this list. He'll be top 5, certainly.
Not my. He's great. I've seen him do some great matches. But he's not my favorite. Yeah.
The Wigan Catcher and Star is great from Carl Gotts to Billy Robinson, and Regal was trained by Marty Jones.
I used to live down the road from the Snake Pit, and it's still going strong. There's a lot of kids from Wigan will still go down there and train. There was a kid in my class, and she went and did a lot of amateur wrestling and sort of fine-tuned her skills there. And she used to go around the country just squashing other kids and beating them all. She'd come into school in the morning. This is like when she was like 5 or 6 years old. She'd come and show me all the medals, and they're like weighing her down because she learned it all in Wigan.
Yeah. Right. I'll just get this list up now. So present, isn't it? Share screen. Right. So do you see that now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got that's one.
Yeah. So this is the bleachreport.com, American website. So rings a bell, this website. I've definitely heard of the Bleacher Report, but I think it's a fairly authentic. It should be a fairly authentic list because I'm sure they.
Yeah, I used it when I did when I streamed SummerSlam a couple of weeks ago. I guess it was. They did a live update thing, so I just had it on the screen while I was chatting, just so that people could have something to read as well as listen to me.
It's a fairly old article. It's from 2011. Not that it really makes any difference because this is obviously the 90s, so nothing would have changed. But so this is the top 25 greatest superstars of the 90s. Now I think it's referring. I don't know if it's referring simply to WWF or WCW.
I think it must be.
Yeah. Sorry, WWE. Yeah, sorry, it's WWE. Yeah. So be interesting.
Look at that poster for Survivor Series there when Warrior never actually ended up being on that. It was Mr. Perfect.
Was that 93? Was it 92?
It was either 92 or 93. I think it might be 92 because I remember being gutted that. I mean, then Mr. Perfect turned up and was amazing. So
because he was in SummerSlam 92 against Macho Man, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then was it Macho Man in 92? Was Macho Man in 92, wasn't it?
Yeah, SummerSlam, yeah. And because they did the double count out thing at SummerSlam just because they didn't want to have anyone lose, I guess. But it's a funny one that because then it was really excited to see Savage and Warrior against Razor Ramon and Ric Flair, and then it was like, oh, right on the last minute, because they continued to promote Warrior right until the night. I remember that, and then they changed the graphic right at the top of the show, and I was like, whoa, what the hell?
So this is top 25 greatest superstars 90s, and number 25 we have got IRS Erwin R. Seister, the Taxman.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Would you have him higher or not in the list at all?
I probably wouldn't have him in the list at all. I mean, I can understand, like he's a decent, obviously he's got a family lineage and Hall of Famer last year. Good in the ring. He was good in the old NWA. He was good, but to be honest, IRS matches put me to sleep. Like, just was not my guy. So yeah, for me, no. What did you think of IRS at the time?
One thing I did like about, not saying his wrestling style, I was always found it curious that a guy would wrestle with a shirt and tie on. And okay, he'd rip it off at some point, but it's just like how convenient is that? I mean, how suitable is that as a wrestling attire?
Yeah. One
thing I did like about, certainly what I remember about IRS certainly was the tag team run he had with Ted DiBiase, and then he obviously became part of the $1 Million Corporation. But now, chat, correct me, but I don't ever recall IRS ever being a babyface. I'm sure his entire run was as a heel.
Yeah, I mean, like as IRS, definitely. Like,
it's like, which is unusual because usually at some point, even in character, without changing character, they will change. I mean, even I remember when Vader became a babyface, it was like fucking Vader. It's like I never saw Vader as a babyface, but eventually. So at least
what was he? He was the US Express or something with Barry Windham before this. Then in NWA, I think he was Captain Mike Rotundo. So he was like all American wrestling jock guy. But this is a completely different like character. But I guess you couldn't have how could you make a good guy tax man?
Yeah,
nobody likes paying the taxes, do they?
Yeah. Well, it's the same with Ted DiBiase. I used to love. Do you ever remember like in the early 90s, like the Ted DiBiase promos, where not like those sort of like, not like in ring promos, those sorts of like segments where he'd be like just being like a complete like jackass. Like there's one where it gets this little kid out the crowd, and he asks him to bounce a basketball like 10 times. And he says, if you bounce it 10 times, I'll give you like $100 or something. And the kid's bouncing it and he just knocks it out of his hand on the 9th bounce. just like,
Oh,
just
those
shit
were
like that.
great. Yeah,
Just shit
those were
like that.
great. They
And
spent so much time on that character, didn't they? To
yeah.
build it. And like those little vignettes were so good. There was one where you have somebody come in the ring, and if they shined his shoes or whatever, give him some money. And I think it was the kid was Rob Van Dam.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would go down in 2024, asking like a
No.
rich white guy to shine somebody's shoes. But
No. And the weird thing is, like, because I spent some time chatting with Ted DiBiase, and he's been really cool at, like, strangely, all the people that I've interviewed who I thought would not, who's kept in touch. Like, he'll occasionally send like a postcard
yeah,
and like just say like, "Oh, I'm coming to England" or whatever. And I like never met him in person. And he was just such a nice guy. But obviously, I think there's a lot of financial, ironically, a lot of financial stuff going on with the family. I'm not even sure if he can travel now. But it's that character that like the Money Inc. was not my favorite $1 Million Man. I felt that it was, like you say, those moments where it was just him being a rich, jackass, mean guy was really, really fun. But he never won the title. Like DiBiase never won the title, which I think is a shame.
I can't remember where was Ted DiBiase? Where was he billed from? Because they'd always say, because like I can't remember. It was like, was he meant to be like a Texan or was he meant to be like a rich Texan?
I don't know.
Because obviously, like Triple H was like the blue blood from Greenwich, Connecticut, even though he don't think he was from there. But,
yeah, I'm not sure where he was billed from, but I think he's from the same area as like. Oh, when he started wrestling, it was like him and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and like that. So, but it says on Wikipedia, Omaha, Nebraska, but then it's a season in WWE. They would bill him as from seasonal residences.
Well, it's like the Undertaker from Death Valley. I'm pretty sure everybody's living in Death Valley. Anyway, back to the list. We got number 24. We got Goldust, obviously another like iconic from an iconic wrestling family again. Obviously Cody Rhodes' brother. But what did you like the Goldust character? Because obviously we're talking about we're talking about Goldust as opposed to the man.
Yeah, like Dustin Rhodes.
So it's like
Dustin Rhodes.
Because I mean, I think Goldust he made his debut in '95, around I think it was '95. Heel character originally, obviously transitioned to a baby face over time, but definitely something not seen before, probably on WWF.
Around that, certainly at that level of that level of. I mean, they would be like, "Oh, he's not gay. He's androgynous. And like Bruce Pritchard will say now, it wasn't like a way of sort of humiliating Dusty Rhodes because they liked kind of, for whatever reason, they like kind of picking at Dusty Rhodes, I guess. But actually, what Dustin Runnels did with this character, and he evolved it as well. And obviously, he had his own issues with substances and different things. So there was great Goldust, really, really cool, interesting Goldust, funny Goldust, and then there was terrible Goldust as well. Like he was up and down, but like he had the backlot brawl with Roddy Piper. Do you remember that one where they kind of did the O.J. Simpson car chase thing? That was awesome. That was so good. He would literally, he made this gimmick work, and I'm not sure anybody else could. Plus, when he's healthy and fit, he is a really good worker. Like now, he's having incredible matches at whatever 50 odd. He's still going.
He must be older than that. He must be like closer to 60. What does? Because I'm 47, and I was like 19 when he made this WWF debut.
Well, he started so young because remember they brought him in to wrestle with Dusty, and then he went away to WCW, and he was like the natural Dustin Rhodes. So let's have a look. So he was born in 1969, so he's 55.
Right, so he's not actually as old as what I was thinking. So he was He's
just been around a long time.
Yeah, because like 26, I suppose when he came into WWF, 26 is not. It's fairly young to be making like a big impact in the WWF, especially back in the 90s, because it was usually well-established stars at that time. I mean, I haven't, yeah, because I mean, even like Stone Cold was probably 30 odd when he made his debut in.
Yeah. It's mad.
I-
It's mad, really, to see Goldust like I bet to see him in person. And I know people who have said to me, like, the thing that they noticed about him, because I've not watched him wrestle in person or met him or anything, is like how tall and built, like just and a lot of like an actual tough guy he is.
Mm,
So to be that kind of character, that sort of cowboy in
yeah.
real life, to play that character so well, which is completely the opposite of his personality,
Well, he did
it's pretty
say
amazing.
he did struggle with
Yeah,
the
I
character
bet.
that he took. And I think his dad as well was like kind of a bit pissed as well with it. But I mean,
Yeah, I
uh,
think so. I think they fell out over it for sure.
yeah,
And like when there was the last time I think Goldust was in WWE was like around 2013 or something like that, and they paired him up with Cody, and not when it was like obviously then they turned Cody into what was it called Stardust, but when it was just Cody and Goldust and Dusty was around and they went up, I think they were against Evolution or something. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This could work. But I don't think Vince could ever let the Rhodes think that they were on
yeah,
like a level, like a royal family level. Even now, when it says wrestling has more than one royal family, I
yeah,
feel that's just Cody asserted himself, like with his music, just like it's almost a bit of an fu to everybody who's kind of like Vince, really.
yeah. Number 23, we got Billy Gunn, obviously
Mm.
formerly of the Smoking Guns in the early 90s before transitioning
Yeah.
over to DX in the mid 90s, well, the late 90s. Mr. Ass, as he's also known.
Mhm.
Again, I always liked Billy Gunn. I always thought I mean, certainly when you look at the Smoking Guns in terms of like when he his breakout sort of like character in WWF, he was always destined to go further than Bart Gunn. He had the charisma. Bart Gunn was always a bit, didn't I don't know where Bart Gunn ended up, but he was a bit like the Marty Jannetty, wasn't he? Because like obviously
Mm.
Bart Gunn disappeared off the radar. He may have gone to obviously went to different promotions. I wasn't watching anything else at the time, but Billy Gunn kind of like established this, you know, he was always a mid carder, but he was always an entertaining mid card. He kind of like got involved with like factions who were like, certainly with the X who were, it kept him, even if he wasn't one of the main eventers, he was still around the main eventers, and being an ally of Shawn Michaels in the 90s was like crucial from a lot of the sheet videos I've seen. If you weren't a part of Michael's like clique and you weren't a
Yeah,
big star, it was it was game over for some wrestlers. So
yeah.
unless you were like one of the top dogs over there, if you were a smaller character and you got on the wrong side of Michaels and Diesel and Razor, then you could be your career could be over before it's even started.
Oh yeah,
So
like Shane Douglas and
mm,
and people like that getting kind of
yeah,
frozen out. I mean, like I think with the Smoking Guns, I enjoyed them. I liked I like the sort of the new. I like the idea that when him and Road Dogg did the New Age Outlaws, I
I
liked
totally
that it
forgot
was
about
like
Road Dogg as well. Yeah,
they were like thrown together, and it
yeah,
became they had great chemistry, and you had two kind of misfits that didn't quite work, put them together, and they were amazing. And
yeah.
like it was interesting, but that was like mainly to do with the way they gelled. I don't think. I mean, I remember a promo, and I can't remember exactly the wording, but I remember a promo The Rock did when Billy Gunn had won the King of the Ring, and he
Yeah,
was just
Sweet
about to
destroyed
go.
them.
He just cut him out. He cut him off. And the thing is, though, he's one of those guys where he will just do whatever they offer him. So, and then even after leaving WWE and going to TNA, AEW, the guy's still going now. His sons are a tag team. Like the guy is again another one people forget. Like if you look at him compared to a lot of the AEW wrestlers, he looks even bigger. He looks because he's like what 6'4", 6'5". He looks 7 foot compared to some of the people he's in with now.
Was he that
He-
tall? Really?
He's really really tall and
It's hard with
still
W.
looks in good nick.
It's hard with because they always exaggerated the heights in WWF.
Yeah,
Back in the day, so they'd have Hulk Hogan build at 6'8", and Hulk Hogan was never 6'8".
Well, and if they're
Never.
all tall,
Yeah.
then it's hard to tell who, other than like Undertaker, Big Show, like you say, Giant Gonzalez, or whoever, like those guys are significantly taller, Andre the Giant. But the other guys who were smaller than them, what we didn't realize that they were massive as well, because Vince just wouldn't put any, like with the exception of one or two people, he wouldn't put anybody in who didn't look like a wrestler. So, or what in his mind made a wrestler. So, like when you look at, say, you put Billy Gunn and stand him alongside, say, I don't know, Bryan Danielson, you'll be like, holy crap, like he's massive. I mean, he's 60 now, and he's still wrestling, and he's, maybe the Acclaimed have dropped a bit, but at one point they were the most over tag team in AEW. So like big up to him for not quitting and not taking his toys and throwing him out of the pram when things didn't kind of work out for him. And he kept, I appreciate him as a performer. I don't think he's the greatest in ring. I don't think he's the greatest promo, but his physicality is amazing. He can go. Like that DX was a fun time as well, wasn't it? So yeah, he deserves to be there.
So number 22, we got Mr. Perfect.
Oh,
Hennig.
Love him.
I'm loving all these old WWF magazine covers as well.
I know it's making me want to go and see if I can find some of mine. But this might have been, I don't think I was collecting them 91. I'd have probably started collecting them maybe 92, 93, maybe.
Yeah, the problem with Mr. Perfect is a lot of the best stuff he did was kind of before I started watching it on a regular basis. Because by 94, when I, obviously the beginning of 94, when I first started watching it every week, he was kind of on his way out. But I mean, I think he left the WWF.
Yeah, he had a back injury. Yeah, he had a back injury. He got paid out. He got his insurance paid out, but then he came back, which a lot of them were doing that. Like Lloyd's of London. Somebody, I think it might have been Randy Savage or somebody had told the other wrestlers like they will pay out if if you're out for a certain amount of time and then just come back. So he did a little bit of commentary around 92. I don't think he was the best at, but in terms of the character, SummerSlam 91 against Brett was the first time I remember watching a match and think, oh, actually, wrestling like can be very different to just two plodding big people. These guys were like, he was amazing. He was just so smooth in the ring and so talented that you could see that like he could go to the point. I always use Bret Hart as a benchmark, and Mr. Perfect was right there with him around that time. It's just that, I mean, it was a legitimate back injury. And then when he came back for that one in 92, when Warrior disappeared for various reasons, he looked amazing again. Kind of petered out a bit in WCW, but yeah, Mr. Perfect, he could be maybe higher on this list because he's so good in the ring.
Yeah, I think certainly with this list, if you're basing it over the entire decade with this one promotion, it's like
that's true.
So for that reason, I mean, I've not seen this list, but for that reason, I'd be surprised if maybe the Undertaker isn't number one because just the fact that he is this entire decade spent with the one promotion. Austin,
if you were doing your list, would you base it on a combination of like
impact,
impact,
impact, and like in terms of like how many of those 10 years that they spend at the WWE?
That's a good point. So Undertaker would be right up there in this case. Because someone like say Ken Shamrock's an example of somebody who came and went because of
I'm surprised Ken Shamrock. I'm surprised Ken Shamrock's in this list. To be fair, I mean, Ken Shamrock was like a legitimate tough guy. This guy, I remember reading a story about how he had Vader in tears with like, you put him in like an ankle lock or something, and Vader was just like crying like a baby. I mean, this is a guy who's come from the UFC who can, I mean, a lot of the WWF guys were legitimate tough guys, but this guy literally could just do what he wanted with you, and there's you had no say in it.
Yeah, he was awesome, and he wasn't a good talker though, was he? That was the only thing.
He was terrible. I mean, just zero charisma. A bit like John Morrison. years
Yeah,
later with
like
this. That
looked $1
guy,
million
the
and could
guy,
do things, but just not
yeah, exactly. I mean,
couldn't talk you into the
give.
arena.
I mean, the Miz would have killed for John Morrison's six pack, but
Yeah,
John Morrison would have
yeah.
killed for an ounce of the Miz's charisma. You know, it's just like,
Yeah, and like I think with Shamrock when he came in and he was like that special enforcer with Brett, with my favorite match of all time, Brett and Austin submission match at WrestleMania. Like he added to that and he was great, and the intensity. Almost the less he said, the better, really, with Ken Shamrock.
yeah,
And again, that's one that The Rock would often make fun of and kind of undercut him a little bit. He there was times I had read that, and he would admit this because I read his autobiography, that he was unreliable. So they didn't give him the top spots that maybe, even though he's intercontinental champion, that they wanted to. Like they felt that he could do more, but they couldn't trust him with it. And he was always trying to leverage it with moves back to the UFC and then not turning up and different things. So I think his in ring was really good. But then he started talking, and it was like, even
yeah,
like he put it this way in the UFC, he made like sometimes made Tito Ortiz look intelligent, and
yeah.
that's like not a good thing.
So what we got next? We have got Alundra Blaze. Now, I kind of feel like this is almost like a token, not a token. I wouldn't have like. I hope Trish Stratus is in this list and China are in it, because
Mm.
if she's the highest placed female, then I've got
I guess for
major
half of
issues.
that decade, if you're talking about longevity, half of that decade when Vince just wasn't interested in women's wrestling, the only person they had was her.
Well,
Like she was winning everything, and because there was no one else.
I don't remember seeing a women's match on WWF TV until like there was like a main event. I think it was like 94, 95. I saw
I
a
think
fair,
in
and I'm
the
like,
80s there was like Rockin' Robin and people like that and Moolah. But
yeah,
like 90s, there's only really up until you get, like you say, Trish and Lita
yeah,
and China, there was only really like in terms of actual wrestling and not just stood at the ringside.
yeah. I mean, she
Um,
literally she
there was
won.
her.
Yeah, I
That
think
was
she
it.
won at WrestleMania 10. I mean, I can't remember what she obviously won. Didn't she take the belt to WCW and put it in the bin?
Yeah,
I'm sure she
yeah,
did.
yeah. She
Which
did.
Vince obviously wanted to be absolutely
Yeah, and then she's in the Hall of Fame now, and
really.
yeah, so like, and I think
I
they did a
suppose,
joking thing of putting something in the bin at the Hall of Fame.
yeah,
Um, but like, she was a good wrestler, like, but I think most of her best stuff was when she was allowed to actually properly wrestle and had time to do it. She was probably over in Japan. So I don't know, maybe like you say, it's hard because there wasn't a lot of much of a platform for her
yeah,
to perform, but so she was probably the best of an almost non-existent bunch.
yeah.
It's very
Um,
different now.
so number 19, we have got the British Bulldog.
The British Bulldog.
I thought he'd be higher because if you think about
There he
his
is.
career in certainly in the 90s in WWF, he was there for a majority of that decade, and Intercontinental Champion. I mean, he was always upper mid card, wasn't he?
Yeah.
For a lot of it, he was never quite again a guy who on the mic was limited compared to he was never
Mm.
as charismatic as like some of the other guys. I mean, I think it was maybe the accent didn't help because like
Yeah,
no
he
offense,
sounded no, but he did sound pretty I mean, I've lived in around, and worked around Lancashire, and he's really broad.
yeah,
Um, and also he didn't seem to be able to think on his feet
yeah,
with his promos or say anything particularly interesting. Um, but it's weird. He did improve, I think, and it's debatable how much, say, the SummerSlam one, how much Brett taught him through how to do it and what to do. But like for me, I always had a bit of a thing where I couldn't totally invest in Bulldog because I was such a massive fan of Dynamite Kid.
mm,
I just thought he was just insanely good. I just couldn't believe how different he was, and it's maybe difficult for people to see now because you've got people like Pac and let's see who else is a bit like um Dynamite Kid, I guess even Daniel Bryan or these sort of absolute pocket rocket small guys who can wrestle when that would for me. So I was almost like, oh, why am I seeing the British Bulldog when I should be seeing? But I didn't realize that because you don't find out this stuff when you're a kid, do you?
Yeah.
But that like he'd done his back in and couldn't hardly walk anymore. But like British Bulldog was good. He'd always be successful when they needed to bring something over here because they would. The one thing they'll always do is fill arenas in Britain, won't they?
Yeah.
So like he's almost like our little token British guy that they had him winning in Germany, which I always thought was funny. They always had him winning in Germany in like the European Rampage tours, and the German fans would be like not sure if to cheer for him or not. Like half would be booing him, and because it's like, look, he's European, and they're like, yeah, you don't quite get it.
The one thing that's interesting about when they bring the shows to the UK or around Europe, and when you bring shows to the UK, you get a lot of like hardcore fans turn up, and especially a lot of the hardcore fans go over to the States and go to Mania, and then the Raw after Mania is always great because you always get a lot of like Europeans there, especially a lot of Brits doing the football chants, and you can see the commentators sometimes are just like blown away by what's going on.
They don't know. Yeah, they don't always know how to take it. I think they're starting to embrace it more now, aren't they? Like they did it with there was a French event recently where the French fans were really loud. They've kind of screwed over the Drew McIntyre twice now with the castle thing, and the fans were definitely did not go home happy in Scotland last time. And they didn't go home happy in Wales either. So it's a but they will keep coming back because we're starved of seeing it, aren't we? And the British wrestling boom is over now in terms of like homegrown stuff. There's just too many sex pests basically.
I just remember the I think it was when Cena was maybe in America, they hadn't turned against Cena quite. I think they turned against Cena maybe slightly after they did in the UK, because I remember they brought Raw. I don't know if they brought Raw to London and they did a show in Liverpool the night before. I can't remember, or it went live in Liverpool. The Raw went live. It was, but when Cena came out, he got booed. They booed the fuck out of him. And this was before it become the norm. Like in America,
it became almost cool to shout, you can't wrestle. And
I think, and he walked out, and I think there was like a slight look of like, look at his face and say, what the fuck? And we just booed the fuck out of him. Because
it's interesting because when they did that in ECW, it actually, I think, added to his character, added another thing where he literally went into hostile territory, and like the ECW fans were just slagging him off, and in the one night stand thing, and if Cena wins, we riot. And I think he was really enjoying that. But maybe it was a bit more of a shock when he was expecting everyone to be like cheering him in Liverpool.
Number 18, we got Owen. Obviously, Owen was technically fantastic. Good on the mic. Not better. I preferred him on the mic to Brett, to be fair.
Okay. I don't think
either were amazing on the mic.
No, I think that when they had something like character-wise to go with, so like if he was like, he would sometimes trip over his words. Like he remember, like he said to Bret Hart, "That's why I kick your leg out of your leg," and like you could see what he's trying to say. But then when he was playing like silly character, because I believe behind the scenes his sense of humor is insanely funny, and everybody was just like, he just can't seem to translate that. Into script, but he was coming into that character, I think, when he was against Brett, and he was a better heel.
He was great. The '94 Owen was a great heel. The whole the WrestleMania 10 when he actually beat Brett with a clean pin. Obviously, that wouldn't have transpired if Brett hadn't gone on to win the title that night.
Yes,
they would never have booked that match like that. But obviously, because Brett was booked to win against Yokozuna, then obviously they thought, well, we can have Owen win clean. But then the whole Bob Backlund Brett storyline with when Owen throws the towel in, he begs his mum,
Yeah.
And then he just starts laughing and jumping around for joy, and then she's
Yeah,
just
he's
like,
just like a real
"Oh,
sniveling
so
little
good."
shit, wasn't he? Really, in
Yeah,
that, and I
it's
like
so
that.
good.
I like that character. He played that character really well.
Yeah,
And the same with Brett. I think like I love like go get him champ like Bret Hart, good guy Brett.
yeah.
First title run. I mean, I am totally biased. I just think he's an incredible guy, but he was also, I think, better on the mic when he was anti-American, like the Heart
That
Foundation stuff was really cool.
that storyline was so clever with the whole anti-American thing, because you had an established base of wrestlers who could all come together. British Bulldog obviously wasn't American. You had the Hart family Canadian, obviously, and then they brought a few other like outsiders in who obviously weren't from the States. And the great thing about that storyline is you kind of created heels from faces, faces from heels, depending on what country you were in.
Where you
And,
were, yeah.
and I remember like Jerry Lawler, who was like the ultimate heel commentator at the time, he sided with the Americans, even though Austin was on that team.
Yeah.
Lawler sided, so Lawler was against heel
Yeah, the people he was
characters
normally.
on Americans if you know, on American TV.
Yeah.
They were the bad guys, and Lawler sided with the good guys. And for Lawler at that time, he was just like the ultimate heel commentator. So it was such a well done sort of like storyline, because obviously they go to
Yeah.
Canada and they'd be loved, and the whole like, you know, argument that Brett based it on, you could almost see like why he'd have an issue with American, you know, why the Canadians would have an issue with the Americans. And there's always been a bit of animosity, I think, between, it's a bit like Scotland and England, I think, you know, with Canada and the States.
Oh, when they did the Canadian Stampede, and the fans were just rabid for the Heart Foundation, and like they're just amazing. Like they were the main faces of that. They were booing Austin out of the building. Then the next week
Yeah,
is the complete opposite.
yeah,
When I thought it was so, like you say, it was so well done. But yeah, he's there on every, he's there deservedly in every, in every list. I think he's incredible. I mean, obviously there was the injury with Stone Cold, and there was a bit of bad feeling that he didn't apologize on.
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know about it, because it's not like I've not heard anybody else say Owen Hart injured me.
Yeah.
But then again, it would be a bit of a weird thing to come out with.
It's not like
Now,
Goldberg.
now,
He's not.
because
He's not like Goldberg, who was like injuring like people left, right, and center. You know, it's just like
Bill Goldberg. Yeah, Bill Gold. I love how Bret Hart always calls him Bill Goldberg because he hates it. he's like, well, sorry if he doesn't like that, Bill Goldberg. Like salty Bret is funny too. I like Bret, like bitter Bret. He's funny. The thing is, Canadians can do, I think, is kind of sarcasm and the sort of British style of humor that maybe some of the American characters can't.
Number 17, we got Randy. Obviously, so Randy, obviously, you know, was gone from WWE for like half of the decade. So this obviously list plays into that, because obviously Randy would be a lot higher.
Oh, it was the 80s.
He'd be in the top 5 easily. But so obviously, you know, I mean, when did Randy Savage have his last match in WWF? Like in the, because I don't. Was it 94?
So he was
93?
Maybe because he was frustrated because Vince was using him as a commentator and he wanted to wrestle again, and that's why he went over to WCW. So it's a bit frustrating, that, because he still had a lot of legs in him, because he went over to what he did though. I think when he went to WCW was he just inflated himself with steroids to the point where he could barely move. But he got through his personality. Such an amazing character. So I guess we're talking 94, maybe even before that, possibly. I remember him. It was when Raw first started. He was one of the first. He was commentating on it, and then he just kind of disappeared. Obviously, there's all kinds of rumors about him and stuff, but he was an incredible in-ring performer for all of the 80s and certainly the beginning of the 90s. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I always remember vaguely. I mean, one of the things I remember from, I think he had a feud with the Ultimate Warrior back about 1991. I think, or it could have been Hogan, but it was involved him, and I think it was sensational. Was it? Who was it? Who? What was the feud in the early 90s where it was like he was with? Was he with Elizabeth at the time? And who was with Sensational Sherry at the? Who was with Sensational Sherry at the time? I seem to remember there was a feud between.
Well, I mean, when he was Macho King, that was when he kind of
Was he with Sherry then?
Anyway, he was with Sherry then, and there was
that'll be it, yeah.
And he was feuding with I think Ultimate Warrior, and the just before that was the big feud with Jake the Snake, where the snake bit him, which was awesome. But that was like the wedding of Macho Man, or the wedding of Macho Man and Elizabeth. It's and that'd be interesting to see if Jake the Snake pops up on this, because he was definitely around. Obviously, he had loads of issues, but he was kind of similar to Randy Savage, where if you're talking 80s, he'd be right up there. But in the 90s,
he wrestled. He was in the WWF longer in the 90s, I think, than Macho Man. So
because he would come and go, because obviously you wouldn't have Austin 316 without
Jake
the Snake. So
and that was like 96, was it? So
yeah, I had that magazine, that one for
6. Yeah, it shows to, a lot of these wrestlers who were like bigger stars have got a cover on WWF magazine. I noticed that Ken Shamrock doesn't.
No.
So, but yeah, Ric Flair again, one who was kind of Ric Flair, arguably, well, not arguably, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, but went between promotions quite often. So he hasn't got like one where the way Sting is synonymous with WCW, and like Undertaker is kind of synonymous with like WWF. Flair was kind of went between. He was it at the end, the old NWA, was it?
NWA, yeah. So I would say that the Four Horsemen era Flair is untouchable, like on the mic, in the ring, just incredible. But then when he came in, who's had a better debut? Well, I'm sure people argue, but who's had a better debut than coming in as the real world's champion, holding the old NWA belt, but winning that? That's probably the best one of the best Royal Rumble performances of all time, where he wins it. And then the promo at the end where he's like, with a tear in my eye, that is amazing. The guy, and then obviously, he goes back to WCW. WCW ends, and he has like a little mini resurgence in the 2000s, and it's only what. I watched his last match pay-per-view thing, which looked like he was going to die. So somebody needed to tell him to stop. But the guy he's just built differently. I mean, the guy had he was in a plane crash and was told that he was supposed to stop wrestling in the early 70s. And he was still going as of, he had his last match.
He died. He literally died. He literally died a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah. The guy's still hammering drink, and
apparently when he woke up, he said, "Can you get me a six-pack?"
Some people are built like that, though, aren't they? Like they can do. It's like Keith Richards. It's like
Aussie.
What is his like what are their toxicologies like? What does it look like inside their bodies like? But yet they are just. It would kill any normal human being. But I think Rick's like that.
And number 15, we got Sid, Psycho Sid, Sid Vicious, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah,
I love Sid back in the day.
Me too. I love him. Yeah.
His mic work was like erratic, to say the least. I mean, he's just his mic work is just consisted of screaming at the top of his voice and sweating profusely.
Yeah, or embarrassing himself again. In WCW, he used to mix things up so much. I'm sure he called himself a stupid star and said like, what was he said? If I've got half the mind you have, or something like that. And it's like, but he got so much charisma, didn't he?
Yeah, I didn't really catch much of his early run as Sid Justice in like the early 90s. I was more clued up with the return when Shawn Michaels brought him back as his bodyguard.
Yeah. Where the New York fans decided that they preferred Sid over Shawn Michaels, and Sid won that match through cheating, and they just cheat, like he hit Shawn with the camera and won, and everyone just cheered him. Like the fans in New York are very much like British or Madison Square, very much like British fans.
East Coast. It's like an East Coast thing, you know, where it's like more.
It's so
I think
funny.
I always thought like East Coast is more in tune with us Brits than like
Yeah. They
certain
just
the
were not
West.
having Sean, they were not having a pretty boy, and they were
Yeah,
like they wanted
yeah,
Sid to beat the crap out of him, and I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that would have drove Vince McMahon
yeah.
insane at the time.
I always love the. I think it was the night after Sean had lost. I think he'd lost to Diesel, and he blamed Sid. Sid came out, and Sid just powerbombed them all over the ring. And he's like, "You listen to me, you sniveling little puke!" And it's just like, it's just.
It's funny as well because he wasn't really like a lover of wrestling. I believe that he used to just want to go and play for his like amateur softball team.
All right.
So like he would just
Yeah.
disappear off. That they
Yeah.
never were able to like push him as much as they like because he was just he didn't have that like I want to be the top guy all the time kind of mentality. It's weird, really, because he looks like an action figure, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not leveling accusations of steroids, but neck muscles like that are hard to come by if you're not like juicing up
Yeah, but
big time.
how's he doing that? That's
I'm not quite
crazy,
sure.
man. Can you
Um,
imagine if just a regular guy just like looked dead normal, but then they just had those neck muscles?
yeah.
You feel like, oh, he's got so you need to get him down the hospital. Something
know.
wrong with him.
But as a big man as well, he wasn't bad. You know, he like certainly more mobile than some of the big guys we've seen like
Yeah.
over the years.
Have you seen the ankle break?
Yes. Oof.
Oh,
It's hard. That's a hard watch. That is a hard
yeah.
watch.
I don't like watching things like that. I'm not one of those
No.
people where I would watch that. I watched it as it happened,
Yeah.
but I never needed to see it again. And
No.
sometimes things flash up, don't they? And you go, oh, I didn't want to see that again. Thanks.
Yeah. Number 14, we got the Ultimate Warrior. Obviously, yes. Obviously, understandably, he's not in the top 10 because he disappeared early on in the decade. Came
Parts
back
unknown.
for about 5 minutes. Yeah, came back for 5 minutes, disappeared again, and never came back.
Yeah, beat Triple H, punish Triple H, 15 seconds or something, and then.
I mean, Ultimate Warrior is kind of like who got me into wrestling because, like, when
he's awesome.
He like Hulk Hogan was kind of like just near. Like by the time I was kind of becoming aware of WWF, Warrior was like the new like superstar. Hogan was like on a downward spiral a little bit, and obviously Warrior had beaten him at WrestleMania 6. And Warrior was just like that sort of action figure type character, you know, like the sculptured physique, you know, the long hair, the face mask, and the face paint, and he didn't make a whole lot of sense in his promos, but it didn't really matter because at that time when I was like 13, 14, I wasn't looking for intelligent promos with like good acting. I was just looking for somebody who screamed and ranted and raved, and I thought that was the
I think it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, totally. Like I remember getting an action figure of his. Like some kid gave me one of his old action figures, and I was like, it had the fingers broken off, so it was kind of, it didn't look quite right. But I was like, this is Ultimate Warrior, is amazing. I didn't even know what Ultimate Warrior was, and then like, obviously the 90s is a funny time because there's a really funny thing if people can find it online. There's like Vince writing to him and like refusing to pay what he thinks he's worth and almost like listing off the reasons why he's not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like there's a lot of bitterness back and forth there. He was just a strange guy with limited ability, masses of charisma, but an overinflated understanding of what he was. And I think maybe in a strange sort of way, it was quite poetic and everything, the way it ended, coming back and then, you know, having that reconciliation, what have you. But like in terms of the 90s, he popped up a bit in WCW, but we're not talking about that. We were talking about WWF. So we had maybe up to 92.
Yeah.
You know, came back at WrestleMania 8 and looked completely different, was off the roids. SummerSlam 92. And then
he disappeared again, didn't he? And then well, this whole, I mean, the King of the Ring
wasn't even there.
I'm guessing this would be for King of the Ring '96, right? This
Oh, that could be actually. Yeah, I was thinking that was the '92 one that he didn't turn up for, but you're right. He did. He
well,
did have another.
I don't think
I forget.
King of the Ring wasn't going in. Wasn't King the first
Oh, was
King
it
of the
not
Ring
'92?
'95?
Was it
I
'94?
think I think the first King of the Ring was '95. Because I
I'm trying to.
think
I'll try and
or
find out which one
'94
it was
maybe.
because the one where he didn't turn up was it was. Oh, sorry, not King of the Ring. I'm thinking of Survivor Series. I do apologize. I'm thinking of the Survivor Series where he didn't turn up. No, yeah, you're right. The King of the Ring stuff. I just remember Brett winning King of the Ring, Owen winning King of the Ring, Billy Gunn, I think. Did Shamrock win it?
I don't
I don't
think
know.
so. Maybe I don't think so.
I have such a patchy memory of that. If you'd have asked me this 10, 15 years ago, I would
Yeah,
be able to reel it all off. But now, honestly, my brain is like Swiss cheese when it comes to stuff like that. Same with football stuff. Like I used to be able to say all players and goals and
yeah.
stuff, and now I'm just like, I think I recognise that guy's face.
Number 13, we got Kane.
Okay, so,
Obviously, massive
yeah,
impact. Only around in the '90s for about '97. He made his debut,
yeah,
wasn't it?
that's gotta
One of
be
the greatest
Kane.
debuts of all time. Like definitely one of the greatest debuts
Yeah,
of all
that
time.
works so well. They pulled that off perfectly,
Yeah,
didn't they?
that was storytelling at its best. Really was.
Yeah, that was
Um,
fun. If you weren't a wrestling fan or if you didn't know anything about wrestling and that was your first thing, you'd be like, "What the hell is going on? This is amazing."
yeah,
I don't. I think only recently has Randy Orton overtaken him as I think it's something like the most amount of matches. I think Kane had the most amount of matches in the either in the modern WWE era or like ever.
yeah.
I think he was right up there, like the guy. Yeah, he's a good character, but like you say, it's probably that tail. If we're talking the '90s, it's the tail end of the '90s. But then he continued on, didn't he? Right up until probably what 2015 or something like
Yeah,
that.
I
I
mean, he
don't know.
thinks he's like a governor now of some, or like a state governor, or not maybe
Yeah,
a mayor. I think no, I think he's a mayor.
mayor,
He's not that high
mayor.
up. He's like a mayor of a town or something. Or
Yeah, it's funny because I think people think he's the. I think it's the fake case. People think he's the mayor of Knoxville, but he's the mayor of Knox County, which is like
right.
tiny.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think that's the story. I'm not an expert on American geography, but it was a perfect like he basically got all the benefit of being in an incredible storyline, but like you have to remember as well that he'd been the fake what was he, the fake Diesel or the fake Razor Ramon, and
He
he was also the dentist as well,
Isaac
Isaac
Yankem did.
Yankem.
Yes. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
so to be fair to him, he made this one work. And also, there's a lot of subtle stuff, like because he was playing a more simple character than the Undertaker, so he'd do like a head cock or
Yeah.
like almost like Michael Myers
Yeah. I was
or
going to
Jason
say
or Jason
Michael
Voorhees or
Myers. Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Number 12, Hulk Hogan. Obviously, Hulkster was like, well,
Mm.
I mean, let's face it, he was barely around in the '90s in WWF. So
We got the match with The Rock, which was a brilliant match. That
yeah,
was good. That was really good. Where they that I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a good period. You've got if you're looking at pure like I don't care what Shawn Michaels says. That Shawn Michaels is overselling. But was that in the 2000s?
I think
I'm
that
not
was
sure.
2000s. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think the NWO came back in, was it 2002? Was it 2000?
Yeah. It will have been after. It'll have been after Invasion. So if you talk, yeah. So Invasion's like what 2001. So yeah. Because they just sat on their contracts, didn't they? They didn't want to have anything to do with the
Yeah.
invasion.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, obviously, Hulk, I mean, I still stand by it that Hulk Hogan is like the most recognizable wrestler of all time, far more than Steve Austin, because
Yeah.
like he's got that look of just. I mean, if I asked my mum who Steve Austin, if I showed her a picture of Steve Austin, she'd just like you draw a blank. If I
Yeah.
showed her a picture of The Rock, she'd say, "Oh, it's the movie star." She wouldn't say it's the wrestler. If I showed her a
Yeah.
picture of Hulk Hogan, she might not know his name, but she'd know the face.
I think you're right. I think recognizable wise, it's between Hulk and The Rock. Obviously, I think because the most profitable time was the Attitude Era and Stone Cold was at the top. He's the most made the most money.
Yeah.
But I bet you second on that list is Hogan probably.
Yeah.
They're the two boom periods, aren't they? Though, so
Yeah.
um,
Number 11 got Lex Luger.
what's interesting, I think he should be a lot lower on the list if we've got some of the
I mean, yeah, because he wasn't in the WWF for like the majority of the 90s. I mean, it was at 93 when he made his debut.
Yeah, so he had the narcissist thing, the World Bodybuilding Federation while he was recovering from his accident, and had the arm thing. So that was he showed up in WrestleMania 8, but not as a wrestler, as an interview for the work. They're trying to get the World Bodybuilding Federation going, and then he did the narcissist stuff, which turned into the trying to make him into a kind of Hulk Hogan style character.
Yeah, the
And
Lex
then
Express.
yeah, and then he just down tools and went and turned up on the first Nitro. So I would still see him more as a NWA, WCW guy. He was never the top guy, and they never felt that they could make him the top guy.
Well, I mean, you look at WrestleMania 10, they had them lose to Yokozuna. They had Brett beat Yokozuna, which kind of tells you all you need to know about what they thought when it came to the main events of the year.
He's not a great in-ring performer. What he had going for him, he looked great, but he didn't. He was not like he benefited from being alongside Sting, I think, as well, because Sting had the charisma. I think Lex was never a good talker, even when they brought him into the Horsemen. Like, he didn't feel like a natural fit in the Horsemen. He didn't feel like a natural fit in the NWO. He was probably better when he was against the NWO briefly. That was probably, but when they put him with Sting, like Surfer Sting, like, because I think they were friends, that kind of worked. But
He looked old before his time as well.
Yeah, his body's
I mean,
like
he looks
amazing, but his face looks.
I mean, if that picture from like 94, whatever, it looks about 50.
That's like, I guess that. I wonder if that's like bodybuilders dehydrating themselves.
I don't know.
You know, it kind of makes you look wrinkly and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah. Plus the mullet doesn't help either.
No.
Number 10, we got Chico Razor Ramon. Definitely.
Amazing.
I put Razor higher, to be fair.
I loved it. I thought he was great as Razor. What a great character. I was talking with Al about him, and I was saying he's got to be one of the best working punchers of all time. Obviously, some people have great punches, but it's because they were actually hitting people. And they look great because they were hurting. But his like working punches were amazing. But Al said maybe like Bobby Eaton's were probably better. But obviously Bobby Eaton was never really in the WWE, or WWF. But like Razor Ramon, what a character. So good.
But the ladder match from WrestleMania 10 is one of the greatest matches of all time. I mean, I mean, I think, was that the first like televised ladder match?
Well, yeah, kind of. So there was a VHS release of Shawn and Brett a ladder match that was I think as a house show, and they recorded that. And I've got that. It's on a VHS called Smack 'em Whack 'em. It's also got Brett winning the title from Ric Flair, which wasn't on an actual event either. If I remember correctly, somebody will probably correct me in the chat, but that's how I remember it. But I think the one that popularized the ladder match was that one. I think because there've been ladder matches in different territories and different things, but I think mainstream big WWF version of it was that, and I think it was great. It was a really well put together match. I think it helps when they're like good friends as well, because they then allow each other their moment. It's not, a selfish kind of exercise.
He also worked well at Razor as a heel or a face. I didn't mind him as I liked him as a heel. And when he transitioned to be, he was just always to say it didn't really matter like what he was to me. I always found him believable as a face or a heel.
I liked Scott Hall even when he was like drunk. Scott Hall, and like he was funny. He was like really like like say just cool but witty, like quite witty. And that's quite unusual to have something like. I think I imagine he could be quite mean to people behind the scenes, but like the actual character of Razor Ramon was so well thought out, well presented. He looked like a star. So there's a guy who had a long road to get to that point, and they just found the right character. And then you thought, oh, why is he throwing that away? But he was throwing it away for guaranteed money in WCW, but also like as the Scott Hall character in NWO was really cool as well.
It was
So
quite.
like,
It's kind of funny though, because when he went to WCW, he came over obviously as Scott Hall, but he still spoke with a Cuban accent.
yeah,
with the name Scott Hall. It's just like
same hair, same toothpick,
I know.
same
Like,
and they did sue them. I don't think they won because like they didn't say who they just said Scott Hall, didn't they? So
yeah. Number 9, we got Triple. That's a really unflattering picture of Triple H. I'm guessing that's when he was when he was in off season from steroids, because he doesn't look. He's like he's in the best physical shape there.
There's some like, has there ever been a wrestler who can look so different from photograph to photograph than Triple H?
Yeah.
Like short hair, long hair, features sort of distorted, really super muscly, in the middle, flabby.
Yeah, he went through a really flabby period in the late 90s, and then he just hit. Well, he hit something. He hit the gym. He hit something else. Because he had to. Yeah. I know when in the early 2000s, I think him and Stephanie were trying for kids, and he had to come off the juice.
Yes. So and then he went a bit podgy looking then as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, all the muscle just kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Triple H, obviously the impact he's had on the business has been massive, and not just as a wrestler, but obviously if it's the job he's got now. But when he got treated like shit for the first few years. I remember that as Hunter with getting the feuds with like Henry Godwin and getting like swill pulled over his head. He got squashed by Ultimate Warrior, which was I think wasn't that for the whole the Click when they left. He couldn't punish Shawn because Shawn was too big a star, so he punished Triple H by getting him in a squash match.
Exactly, and the thing, I suppose that's why his 90s are a bit patchy. But I think when the original DX, that's my favorite Triple H, him and Shawn, like that. Not the sort of the silly one that when they got back together again later, or the one with X-Pac and those guys, which I think was fine. But him, Shawn, China, and maybe like Rick Rude. That was my favorite DX. I was like, I got the DX VHS that Christmas because I was like, these guys are really cool. I also got the because Stone Cold said so one. So like we're talking 96, 97, 98, 99. Those guys were the top people. So that's quite a big chunk of the time, even though I feel like he's more of a 2000s character because he's like the game in 2000s. But the music that he had before the Motorhead one, I really like that. I really like.
Is that the one where is it 1 2 is this on?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I love that music, and it's hard to find clips now with them coming out of that.
Yeah,
because it's on YouTube. It's like let's go way back to like that sort of time after Punter, but before the game.
Yeah, it's weird that, isn't it? It's weird.
And a lot of the time he'd come out to the DX music as well. So there's not that many clips online of him coming out to that music.
It was cool.
But yeah, I mean, certainly, that was him, Shawn at that time, Austin, kind of like bringing that anti-hero feeling. The DX were definitely a kind of like reaction to the NWO. On a sort of smaller level. But Triple 8, Yokozuna. Wow. He had a massive impact on the WWF back in when he came in. Like there was the whole thing that he couldn't be slammed, he couldn't be picked up, and obviously, I remember I think it was the Royal Rumble where he was like Randy Savage for some bizarre reason decides to pin him in the middle of the Royal Rumble, and then because he just threw him out of the ring
straight up in.
I never understood what the thinking was behind that. Just
that is an odd one. I mean, it just makes Randy Savage look really stupid.
Yeah, and then but it showcases Yokozuna's strength as well. But I mean, he was like literally he had multiple opportunities to lose weight, and he just kept on putting weight on. I think this is one of the occasions where they didn't exaggerate somebody's weight because
and he just got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where he couldn't do anything, and it's actually really really sad. Yeah, I think he died in England, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He died in somewhere like a really random place.
Yeah, it's like Warrington or somewhere.
I think it was like, oh no, it was Liverpool.
Oh, was it Liverpool?
He died here. Yeah, he died in a hotel in Liverpool. Yeah. Yeah. So
Blimey.
I think he'd done a show in Liverpool. And he died in the hotel that night, I think, or he died the night before.
I'm smiling. I'm not smiling because I'm smiling just because it's so weird.
Yeah,
it's like
I'll have to go and find out where he died, and
I think the thing is, I know, yeah, like Dart Taurus. It's like he was 34.
Yeah,
like now, obviously, because I'm an old dude, that's like a kid.
yeah.
That's so sad. People said that he was out of the family. He was one of the most talented. Like when he was younger, they could see him like when they were training him and stuff. Like his ability for a big guy was amazing.
Yeah.
But then you saw it less and less because physically couldn't do it.
Did you realize at the time that he wasn't Japanese? Because I just assumed I never realized. I thought, oh, he's actually Japanese, and it's it's obvious he's not Japanese.
Yeah, well, I just never even clicked that he was one of the Samoan families. I watched the video things with him and Mr. Fuji, and they were eating sushi, and like he was eating tons of rice, and Lord Alfred Hayes was like working out how much rice he would eat in a day and all this. Like I just bought into it totally. I was like, this guy is an actual sumo wrestler.
Yeah. Number 7, we got Diesel, Big Daddy Cool.
Diesel,
obviously.
Chuck Norris there.
I know, Chuck Norris interview. It doesn't look that much different from today. I liked, I do like some of the big guys, and Diesel was like, legitimately a big guy, 7 foot something. I think he was officially 6'11", but they build him as 7 foot because why wouldn't you? It just sounds a lot sexier, doesn't it? But he was. I mean, he obviously he debuted as Shawn's like bodyguard again, and they made them tag team champion with Shawn briefly, and obviously then he took the belt. I think he took the belt from Brett, didn't he? In 90. No, he took the belt from Bob Backlund, didn't he?
Yeah,
Backlund took the belt from Brett, and then they had that ridiculous match where it lasted like for 4 seconds, and Diesel just like I'd never understood what. Was that just? I
think that was maybe to protect Brett and get the belt off him and give it to Diesel. I don't know, really. It's a funny one. Around that time, I don't know if it ties in with when Vince was having the steroid trial or the neck surgery, and there was a few different people. I don't know. There was a lot going on.
I don't remember the footage from Diesel defeating Backlund was kind of all seemed to be like sort of like raw. Like VHS.
Yeah, it was on a house show. Yeah.
It wasn't something that went on live on TV, and it was just I remember thinking at the time, just like a really weird decision, like story.
Yeah, and to be honest, people say that he didn't make a lot of money, but it depends where the business is at the time as well. Like it wasn't a boom period, so it's difficult to say, like to just say, oh, he's not going to necessarily bring in. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it could have been. It's just a weird one. It's hard to quantify and measure depending on like the people who were champions before him. Like, have a lot to say with how successful he's going to be because that's where the business is at that point, and it has peaks and troughs like anything else. He, for me, he got cooler and more interesting as he went along, and then he left. And I think in WCW he got like like a bit lazier, and got more money and did less. So fair play to him. And he's a funny guy and like a smart, intelligent guy who got a lot of money out of the business.
Yeah,
but he's really high up on this list.
Yeah,
for the impact he had in the WWE. Or WWF, should I say? Like, I guess Scott Hall was never world champion, was he? Which Razor Ramon wasn't. I don't know. Because he had more ability than Diesel.
Number 6, we have got Mick Foley.
Wow, yeah.
Mankind, Dude Love, Cactus Jack.
Yeah.
Again,
he can be on there 3 times.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, he was like, it was like 97, I think he was, it about 97, he a bit as Mankind, he first made his debut in WWF.
Maybe a bit before, because I remember I'll find out when In Your House Mind Games was, because I know that wasn't his first one, but that's
Yeah.
what I always remember in with him and Shawn, one of his best matches.
I'm trying to think of this first feud, because the Undertaker feud was 98 with the Hell in the Cell match, but he'd been around for a good 12. I can't remember his initial feud.
So Mind Games was 96, but I think, let's see, Mankind. If I just Google Mankind, I'll probably find out when he was Mankind first. Return to.
It says here, actually. It says on the just underneath the poster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the King of Hardcore debuted in 96 as Mankind. Became
Right.
the Undertaker's first real nemesis. Yeah. So, yeah, he debuted. But, I mean, the Hell in the Cell match was 98, wasn't it? Where he got thrown off.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny where every year he puts on like just for the benefit of our British fans, please don't post about me being tossed off the cell. It means something very, very different.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like the impact he had, obviously was massive. Again, you know, I'm just, but when did he? Because obviously I sort of checked out of wrestling like too far. Had he left by? When did he?
So he'd retired ish, and then he went to TNA and had another run, and retired there. But he'd done a commentary stint where he really didn't like being coached by Vince, and that's why he left and went to TNA. And then had some pretty awful matches. I think he maybe had one decent one. I can't remember. He had matches against Ric Flair and stuff like that. But in terms of like what we're judging him on here, I guess for me, I loved all this. I mean, that was the turning point, wasn't it? That was where the ratings changed, was because Tony Schiavone was told to say that's what will put butts on seat. A guy who used to be called, you know, Mick Foley used to be called Cactus Jack here in WCW, is just about to win their world title. And then everybody turned over to watch it.
Yeah.
Like that was the turning point. And the guy was underrated in the sense of he could make a match with anyone. He could make anyone look good. But a lot of that's down to sacrifice. Like the guy sacrificed his body more than most people. I remember watching all the deathmatch stuff in Japan, and I was a massive Terry Funk fan. Obviously that's Mick Foley's hero, and you see a lot of Terry Funk in him. He was great. He's well deserves to be on this list just for what he did to himself for the business. Iconic moments. That's probably number one, isn't it, in the 90s?
Probably.
The Cell. Yeah. Gotta be.
Rock is only number 5.
Ooh.
So it's actually because obviously Austin, Undertaker are higher, but I'm trying to think who.
Shawn Michaels, maybe?
Shawn Michaels. So who? I'm trying to think who the other wrestler would be. It's probably. Well, we'll get to that anyway.
Al Snow? No.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, we don't really need to. What needs to be said about The Rock, really? I mean, obviously, I think he debuted in 97, did he? Maybe because he debuted so late in the decade. I think it was 97 he debuted. Was it 96?
Yeah. I'm terrible with dates. Yeah, because he was Rocky Maivia and his dad. I remember his dad came in and helped him win the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. I remember I had a tape from Memphis TV that somebody sent me, a VHS, and he was called Flex Kavanagh.
He obviously joined Nation of Domination, but that's where he really got the attitude.
Yeah, personality was great.
That was the heel turn, wasn't it? And you know, we obviously took over from Ron Simmons as the lead of the Nation of Domination, but that's when Vince allowed him to, you know, open up and explore the character and be a bit more, you know, show his personality. Because as Rocky Maivia, it wasn't working. And obviously, he mentions the fact that the fans were chanting "Die, Rocky, die,"
and he turned that and used that so well, didn't he?
Yeah, but again, some of the most iconic moments of, I mean, again, something The Rock did so well, even early on, was like making the fans hate him, but at the same time, they loved him. You know, he was so clever with his promos. He could get them. He just had them in the palm of his hand.
Yeah,
And
him and Austin together were
yeah,
just dynamite, like
yeah,
personality wise, bouncing off each other.
yeah,
They were so
uh,
good. Like he was that nation domination turn, the one where he, obviously, like you say, went from die Rocky die. That became a bit of a template for deliberately pushing people as faces that like a real white
yeah,
meat baby face to the
yeah,
point where people hate them, and then that person getting bitter and angry and becoming
yeah.
like a heel. Like they did it with Kurt Angle. They followed the same. They did it by accident with The Rock, but they did it deliberately with Kurt Angle, and I
Oh,
think that was quite smart.
we might have just discovered who the wrestler we couldn't think of was Kurt Angle,
Um,
maybe.
oh,
Although
maybe.
Manji
Yeah, he's more.
Manji 99. No, because he joined in on 99, was it?
He's got to be. He's got to be up there in the 2000s for sure. So,
Sean at number 4. I can't think who this other wrestler is. Above
Brett.
Brett, of course, Brett. Yeah.
It's Brett's number 1, hopefully, in my eyes, anyway.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, obviously, we got Sean, Brett, Taker, and Austin, but obviously Sean was there for the duration. Though I haven't said that, no, because he injured himself in. Was it 97 with the title? After
97, so yeah,
that's when
he got through that.
Wasn't that his last match for about?
Yeah. So what was it? It was like a SummerSlam against Triple H where he came back, and it was a good few years later.
Yeah, so that's probably why Sean's.
Yeah, because that 97 match, he was in agony for the match, wasn't he? The actual match against Stone Cold.
But they kind of sold it.
Get through him.
Didn't they sort of sell it as because Tyson sort of like punched him and he landed on his back, and I think they tried to argue that it's Mike Tyson's punch that's put him out of action.
Can you imagine his punch is so hard that it damaged his back, and he couldn't wrestle for like 3 or 4 years, whatever.
Yeah, but obviously, Sean from like early on. I mean, the whole heel turn when he turned on Jannetty, right through to like his return as a face, and then the whole run where he won the belts with, and he brought his old trainer back, the Mexican guy, was it?
Oh, Jose Lothario.
Yeah. I didn't like that whole.
They're trying to make him into a really lovable chap, and he just isn't. And it's just not his personality.
He was a complete twat at the time as well. Yeah. So
yeah, and that's the thing. And I a lot of people will say that even the nice guy stuff is a bit of an act. But it didn't work then. And as soon as he has a bit of an edge to him, then there's no stopping him. He's always going to be great in the ring, but when he's got an edge, personality-wise, and a bit of nastiness there, that was the one I liked, where he was a bit... To be honest, I probably like the one where he was the most... when he was probably the most messed up in his personal life was the most interesting.
So Undertaker is number 3. So it's Austin and Brett the top 2.
Brett number 2, Austin number 1, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but Undertaker, made his debut in 1990. Wrestled, didn't take any breaks, was there from the beginning right through. I don't believe he took any breaks in the 90s. I don't remember him being injured for any amount of time.
I think maybe there was possibly one injury, and then when he came back, just before he came back as American Badass, there might have been an injury then, I think. But he's pretty consistent, and even if he's not the best wrestler of that period, or he's probably, there's an argument to be made that he's the best character that was ever created.
Definitely. I mean, in terms of a character that is like just even like when they changed his character to like the American Badass, he was still the Undertaker.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. He wasn't like Mark Calloway. He was still the Undertaker, but it was the Undertaker with a completely different outfit on, driving a Harley. But so it kind of goes to show how the impact that name has. And
I like the Ministry of Darkness stuff, even though it was
I love that.
I liked all the music. There was like a Ministry of Darkness version of the Undertaker music.
That was fantastic. Yeah, it got a bit NWO times with the Ministry of Darkness. And especially when they merged with like the McMahon, like remember like the corporate ministry. There was like 25 people coming to the ring, and it's just so stupid. But
oh man, honestly, that's what Tony Khan does. So have a group and another group, and he won't know what to do with the group. So he'll use a bit of one group's name and a bit of the other group's name, stick them together, and you're just like, oh, this is doomed for failure. Like,
yeah. So we got 2 left. We'll try and wrap this up because it's nearly 12 o'clock. So I'm going to say, I think Austin's number 1.
Yeah, he's got to be.
Yeah.
He's the best. He is the best.
That would be that. That is that the WrestleMania? Is that June 94? Is it?
I think that might be 92. That because you've got Roddy Piper at the top. You've got Tatanka IRS.
Yeah, I'm just trying to read the. It's got the date, but I can't make it out.
I reckon that's either 92, 93, maybe.
Yeah.
Let's just see at the top, WrestleMania Battle for the Ages, and then it's got a picture of Roddy Piper. Oh no, Brett's got the title, the world title on there, so it's probably 92.
It's got Owen Hart as well at the bottom. So,
it could be a bit later then. It could be 93.
But I mean, Brett obviously was massively important to the company. Like he was like carrying the company, not once carrying the company, but before the Attitude Era, like certainly between like 94 and 96. He was involved in most of the major storylines, you know.
And I think people forget that, like, if he wasn't the most popular in the US, wherever they went around the world, he was loved, like around the world. Germany, particularly England, Ireland, all, you know, he was a kind of an international champion, and maybe wasn't as loved in the US as. I'm not saying he wasn't, but just not at that level. Like he was never quite up to the Hogan level, and that's all he had to follow was the Hogan level. My favorite feud of all time is him and Austin. My favorite match of all time is him and Austin at WrestleMania. I admire him as a person. Like I met him and he was lovely and really friendly and just nice to people who didn't really know who he was. Like some people who were just like friends and family and stuff. And he was. Like I've collected sort of figures and T-shirts, and I like the fact he knocked the hell out of Vince McMahon, probably the best wrestling documentary of all time. Changed the business, great technical wrestler. Just for me, it's just my favorite wrestler of all time. He's the first wrestler I really said was my favorite.
Yeah.
So. I am biased when it comes to Brett. Like I will kind of ignore anybody who says anything negative and only hear the positives.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like longevity as well. I mean, he was around for like a long time before. Like this is obviously a 90s list, but he was. I mean, didn't he make his debut in about like 84 or something? In WWF?
Yeah, because before they were wearing pink, it was like the Heart Foundation. The Heart Foundation. There was one. He told a story about where Vince wanted him to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
When he first started, but then eventually the Heart Foundation with the blue and the Danny Davis one, and they were bad guys. So he was around a long time, wasn't he? And to be fair, he was going to stay forever, wasn't he? They just couldn't honor the money that they promised him.
Yeah.
Which is mad now, because obviously that wouldn't be an issue now, would it?
No, certainly not. I'd be curious to know how much this with the Netflix deal, whether they're gonna, the top guys suddenly saying, well, I want a pay rise, because I don't know what, like, do you have any idea like what the likes of Cody is making in a year? Just purely based on his contract and not any additional.
Oh man, do you know what? I wish I'd written. I wrote this down because I have seen this recently, and I don't want to say it wrong, but some of them, I'm trying to remember. Like the top one, I can't remember whether it was Roman Reigns. I can't remember. There was somebody who was touching over $1 million a year. And then there was quite a lot on $500,000. But then the problem is AEW were matching that. But then that doesn't take into account merchandise and stuff, does it? I suppose.
Yeah, but that's peanuts when you look at like top footballers or basketball players. they're making like multiple. I suppose, but
Or
the
not
thing
even
with
top ones, yeah.
well, the thing with wrestling is that it's such a punishing business that if you were making like tens of millions a year, like it would be the incentive to keep going. It'd just be like it's such a tough, demanding like business that it'd
Do you
be.
know what? Now you've said that, I don't trust myself. I might need to find out. WWE top wages. Let's have a look. Because I literally just typed in way too big wages. Okay. Oh, right. So I got that wrong. So Roman Reigns is on 15 million a year.
I thought a million seemed.
Yeah, I maybe I forgot to. I'm terrible with maths. I probably forgot a zero because Cody. I thought I saw a million for Cody, but no, it's like 10 million.
Yeah.
Randy Orton 10 million. Seth 9 million. Drew 8 million. CM Punk re-signed 8 million. But even somebody as like mid carders like Finn Balor's on like 7 million a year.
Fucking hell, man! That's I honestly they must just be a genuine love to just keep doing it, because if I was like somebody like Randy who's like mid-40s, I would have retired a long time ago.
Well, that's it. He's exactly the same age as me, and like he looks. I mean, he's ripped and muscly and like awesome, but in his face, and he looks like he's constantly in pain.
Yeah, it does. He's got like he's turned to like this sort of it almost just looks like slightly bloated, and his face is like bright pink. All that. He's
just
just
kind of awkwardly
walking
around like stiff.
Yeah, he's definitely. Yeah, I think Randy needs to sort of like maybe just take a step back and just, because Randy's one of those who just seems to be like, even though I've dipped in and out over the years, he's always been there, just constantly in the frame, and he's never really. I don't remember the time when he's really taken a break either. He's just always around.
Only injuries, and the thing, he's had some big injuries, and his body's changed so much over time. I literally watched a dart match of his. I found these old satellite feeds when they used to send the tapes, the feeds back, and they were just raw feeds. It's on my channel, and I was watching it the other day, and it took me about 3 minutes into the match to realize it was Randy Orton. It was only when he did like an arm drag, and I was like, "Oh crap, that's Randy Orton," because I'm used to seeing him what he looks like now, he looks like a big sort of hot dog sausage now.
He does, yeah. I've exited the it was Austin was number one. I mean, we've kind of covered Austin a lot anyway, John. But and it is like nearly midnight, and I'm got to be up for work for 6 a.m. So I was trying to. I think we spent that long at the beginning to discuss
preamble,
But yeah, because I would have done some of that before we went live, but obviously technical issues. But and
that was
sorry,
fun. Everybody was
apologize to the chat. Obviously, I was involved in. I don't see the chat when I'm going through the list, and I just didn't have time to keep coming back and highlighting the chat. I do apologize for that. I'll make an effort next time to make sure I do that. It's just that, early starts and late streams, they don't really go well together. But
there was also some awesome comments. There's some really insanely knowledgeable.
A lot of guys, Dan's
fans.
Dan really knows this. I'm sure all the guys really know.
You forget though that people have that same love for it. Because really in your everyday life you don't really talk to people about it that much, do you?
No. Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, a lot of the stuff I remember from the 90s is more just from. I've got a bit of a. It's almost like an autistic thing. I can always remember stuff like to the year from the 80s and the 90s, but when it comes to anything from like 5 years ago, I can't remember like if something was 2020 or 2021, but. It's like when you get to a certain age, your long-term memory for dates 30 years ago is a lot better than it is for stuff from 10 years ago. So if I'd been following WWF, WWE religiously over the last 15 years, I'd still struggle probably with the years 2010 to 2020, because I just don't really seem to like take those dates in as well as I do for dates when I was a kid. Because when you're a kid, I think dates, it seems to like have a lot more like resonate a lot more, film years. I can name it like a movie from the 1990s. You tell me what movie it is, I'll tell you what year it came out. If you give me a movie from the last 10 years, I'd be like, well, maybe 2016.
It's like the height of your fandom of something as well, and like you're like literally enraptured. And because we didn't have so much stuff, we'd watch things more than once, so
Yeah.
it'd like burn into your brain as well. Like say for instance, you tape something off television, like a Star Wars film or something, then you'd watch it like 15 times.
Yeah.
Like you're unlikely to do that in your 40s.
No. No.
And
Like,
also, my brain doesn't work as well now.
Well, it's like you said to me, what year did like Empire Strikes Back came out? 1980, Jedi 83, Star Wars 77. What year did The Last Jedi came out? Not sure.
What was the name of the latest Netflix? Not Netflix, Disney Plus thing. Yeah, I don't know. I can't even remember.
What, the one that was cancelled?
Yeah,
Acolyte. Yeah,
Acolyte. There you go.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember it, so yeah.
I never watched it. I just see a lot of people complaining about it on YouTube.
Well, that's it. And then it's gone and forgotten. And I'm not going to watch it 12 times and keep it on a VHS.
Yeah. Star Wars has been with Disney Star Wars now. It's become a little bit like with all these shows. It's almost like the Acolyte is kind of like watching NXT UK as opposed to Raw is like the Empire Strikes Back. It's just
that's the frustrating thing as well. Like there is some within that stuff that no one.
There's going to be some good stuff.
Really good stuff, like somebody like say Pete Dunne, Ilya Dragunov, Volta, who's doing really well now as world champ. Like they're all great, but no one was watching it.
Yeah,
and it's really sad in a way.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like
things get lost in the shuffle.
Well, it's a bit like Andor was a great show.
Andor's amazing.
Kind of nobody remembers it now because there's been that many fucking Disney Star Wars shows over the last 3 years that things just get lost in the shuffle. Yeah, you're right. It is. But anyway, we're going to wrap things up now because it is midnight and we've been going for 2 hours. So
I know we've been chatting away.
Yeah, it's good to get back.
Yeah, man. Stream, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
No worries. Obviously, going down the line, we'll start looking at trying to do a bit more stuff together. Certainly looking at taking like a certain year and then going over all the sort of like the pop culture, the movies, the music, the video games. That's something I'm looking at doing.
We remember as well. That'd be good.
Yeah, we'll get Gareth on board for that as well.
Oh, he's got a better memory of me as well.
Yeah. But for everybody who jumped on tonight, thank you very much. I've still got Cliff's comment from like an hour and a half ago. I forgot to take off.
He keeps repeating himself. Doesn't
he? But everyone who jumped on board tonight, thanks a lot, guys, and I'll catch you next maybe in a couple of weeks. Anyway, good night. Bye.